All right, welcome back. I hope that you've had an awesome week. And if not, I hope that you have an awesome week this upcoming week. Now, geez Louise, so much has happened since I last saw you, since you last saw me. Things are going well, as always, but there's definitely been some really heavy emotions and really heavy thoughts, and definitely a lot of stuff moving around internally for my girlfriend and I. And yeah, it's been quite a week, but it's also been a very good week. So let's see. I think today I would love to dive more into the topic that you are not your thoughts, and kind of helping to maybe distinguish between your thoughts and yourself. And I mean, that's a really big topic. Philosophers and religious figures and educational figures, and you name it. I mean, people who think have a lot to say on the topic. And it's not just thoughts too, it's these emotions, right, that we all deal with. And so, yeah, today I just kind of want to explore this a little bit more in depth. I like to think about your thoughts as if they were drops of water. And when you focus on them enough, they become a stream, and then eventually a river, and even further out than that, an entire ocean. And so each small thought, it can be fleeting, just like a single drop of rain. It's a fleeting thing that odds are you won't even really notice, and almost especially won't remember. Some drops have the potential to be that powerful. Some thoughts have that potential to be that powerful, but it's more often than not, a single thought. It may seem insignificant and just evaporate as quickly as it came. But repeated enough, it contributes to a larger body of mental and emotional momentum, becoming those streams, rivers, oceans. So, like a single thought might be, well, I'm really anxious about this thing. And it may not matter. You may go through that feeling and then get to the other side of it, and everything is good to go. But thinking I'm going to fail 50 times in a day, well, that starts to become a pattern. So we have these thoughts, right? And when all of these smaller and insubstantial, really, thoughts start to concentrate and we start to give our attention to these little drops, well, then they start to pool together and they start to form a trickle or a stream. And so this is when a theme or a habit of thinking starts to develop. Your worry, your judgment, your ambition, your gratitude. These are how you start these streams becoming into. These are how you start to pull these insubstantial thoughts into these streams by giving them your attention and using repetition, right? And so just like, like repeated self-criticism becomes a subtle but consistent inner narrative and becomes like this river, right? So over time, the stream, it deepens into and widens into a river, and that becomes a belief in your mental posture on a situation. And the river has direction and force. It moves you, and often unconsciously. So you may begin identifying with it. I am anxious. I'm not lovable. On the flip side, I am powerful, or I am blessed. I like to use the one personally. I'm the universe's favorite. And eventually, the river empties into an ocean. Vast, deep, and often invisible in origin. And at this stage, the thought pattern is who you are, or more accurately, who you believe you are. And that's actually a really important distinction. But it becomes the baseline, way that you interpret reality, your emotional climate, and the energy you bring to the world. But it all starts off with those little insubstantial drops. And, well, then it accumulates. But the core idea is you are not your thoughts, but you can become them. And I say can because you don't have to. You actually make the conscious choice to give these ideas attention. And that's a really, really, really powerful thing. And it can be a very, very powerful force in your life if you learn how to control your attention. I am still doing my greatest. I'm giving it 110% effort to always have an attitude of gratitude, to be relentlessly optimistic about the future and about the way that things are going. And I try to embody truly positivity in every aspect of my life that I possibly can for myself and for the people I love, because I believe that those rivers will be blessings to myself, but also to the rest of the world. And I mean, just going with this whole analogy and theme, the idea that you are your, that these thoughts are like drops of water is really interesting, because there's a lot of parallels, right? Sometimes you get massive storms that come through. And I mean, this comes with great changes and grief and sometimes with big moves in your life or transitions and all of these things, right? So, these big storms come through, and, in the middle of them, so I lived in Louisiana for a while, and I remember it was around Hurricane Katrina. It wasn't that storm specifically, but it was around that time frame. And, when you see these giant hurricanes coming through, it's very easy to think like this is the end of the world. And, it's hard to separate ourselves, because those insubstantial drops became like a pouring river, and it's something that is really powerful. They're not nothing, but how you react to these storms, to these water drops, to what's happening is everything, right? So just to kind of circle back a little bit, you are not your thoughts. They arise spontaneously, often uninvited, just like the weather, right? But you can become them through attention, repetition. They can shape your character, your emotions, your relationships, and your decisions, and they do. So the mind is everything. You know, what you think, you really can become. You know, but the interesting thing is that, well, it's kind of one of the only realms that you actually have power over too, is your own mind. And it's actually not, you can't control outside events, but you can control your own mind with really, really strong and determined effort. Very, very big caveat there. And, you know, I mean, there's a lot of questions arise, you know, with all of this. You know, I mean, for instance, I mean, your thoughts do not equal actions, right? So, well, I guess that's not really a counterpoint so much as an observation to it, but you may think of harming someone, but that doesn't mean you will. You know, not all thoughts are consequential. You know, many arise from fear or memory or fantasy. You know, what matters is how you relate to the thought. You know, what attachment, curiosity, fear, or dismissal do you have with the thoughts? And it's really, I guess if I could say that throughout all of this analogy and metaphor, I think what would be really good is to kind of develop this awareness around this idea and to pay attention to the consistency at which you're feeling certain thoughts and how you're reacting to them, what attention you're bringing to these thoughts, and what you're turning into streams and rivers and oceans of belief and ideas. You know, so one really good counter is that external reality pushes back, right? You might become your thoughts internally, but life circumstances may still define your narrative. You know, a person may believe that they are destined for greatness, but without action, without feedback, without humility, you know, that thought alone won't transform into reality. You know, and in fact, it could just transform into delusion. You know, so it's a good grounding point. And I guess that's kind of just backing up the point that you're not your thoughts, right? But still, I mean, you might have really severe intrusive thoughts. You know, maybe you have a crazy case of OCD or PTSD or depression. And, you know, often those thoughts are very much involuntary and unrepresentative of your true value and your intentions. So, I mean, those are it's especially important to be aware that you are not these thoughts. I guess maybe you could ask yourself some questions like, what thought patterns am I feeling daily, whether I realize it or not? That's a really good question to ask yourself. Is there a stream that once seemed small, but now has become a river? What ocean am I swimming in? And is it one that I want to be in? Can I choose a new drop today? If I could, what would it be? What happens when I just watch the thoughts go by like clouds? I think that those are some really, really cool thoughts that you can play around with this whole idea. keeping that framework in mind. You know, and for bonus points, you know, storms, you can see your emotional climate as, you know, sudden emotional storms that happen. You know, or maybe you have a dry spell. Maybe it's a drought. Maybe there's, you know, periods of just mental numbness or stagnation that you're going through. Maybe you've put up dams to block these rivers, and, you know, you've suppressed emotions or thoughts from happening. Maybe there's pollution. Maybe you're experiencing some toxic media or some kind of trauma or gossiping, or, you know, you're finding some real garbage that you're putting into your streams of thought that normally would otherwise be a beautiful, serene place. And how much direct thought and energy are you giving towards creative thoughts or service-based thoughts, helping others, or healing thoughts, healing yourself or those around you? So those are all really good questions to ask. And one thing that kind of came up for me when I was thinking of this whole concept is, all right, well, okay, got it. Not my thoughts. Makes sense to me in an experiential level. And I'll get into that too. It's really important that it's an experiential level. And it's also what makes this whole concept so kind of like duh, but also really, really tricky and challenging at the same time. Because it's obvious intellectually, but when you experience something, it's much, much different. You know, when you're watching somebody hike Mount Everest on a television, you know, you can imagine how cold that would be. You can understand how rigorous and intense that whole experience must be. But it's only once you actually do it that you really understand the full depth of that experience. And for me, it took 10 days of silent meditation, not speaking to another human being and sitting with my thoughts, that I even realized that thoughts are something that are separate from you. I am not my thoughts. And it's something that's so obvious on the surface, and you can say that, and it's like, well, obviously, right? I mean, I can have these really crazy intrusive thoughts. If I tell you to think of pink elephants, you know, maybe there's a few of you that are really, I mean, I don't know, who knows? Maybe somebody thought of something else completely, but maybe you thought of a dancing pink elephant, or you just saw the word pink elephant, whatever, however you process, that's not the point here, but you don't get to choose which thoughts come in. So you're not these thoughts. They're imaginary, and they're these figments, right? So I would say that if you're not those thoughts, you are the awareness behind your thoughts. You're the witness. You're the context, but not the content. So if you think about it, you are not the water at all. You're not the raindrops. You're not the streams. You're not the river. You're not even the ocean. Now, those become your character, but it isn't you. It's like, instead of those things, you're the riverbed, right? You're the vessel that thoughts move through. But even deeper, you're also the earth beneath the riverbed, right? You're the silent presence that allows the flow to exist at all. And when you can understand that separation, you can then understand, well, okay, well, I'm obsessing over this one thing, and I'm creating this stream of consciousness that is running right through everything that I'm trying to build. It's running through my cities, and then it's become this river that is eroding at all that I'm trying to build, because I've put this river of worry through, right through the middle of my city that I'm trying to build. And or maybe it's a delusion. I'm the greatest ever that ever existed. I'm so magnificent. It's going to be the greatest. I'm the greatest person that ever existed. Maybe that's running through everything that you're trying to do that's good, wherever it comes from. But the important part is not identifying with I am this river. It is I am experiencing this river, and I also have the power to change its direction. Now, some rivers are huge, right? I mean, some rivers, if you wanted to change the course of the Mississippi, that would take some incredible engineering, lots of manpower, lots of money. That is no easy endeavor, but it is possible. So, definitely wanting to keep that in mind. And another thing to keep in mind, right? So you're not the river, you are experiencing it though. And another, I guess if we were to kind of put this in a framework, are all thoughts equally powerful, right? Because then you can kind of distinguish potentially. I would look at frequency, how often you're thinking of, anything, whatever it is. Emotional, how strongly are you feeling because of this thought or emotion that's arising. And your belief, or like identification, like, do you believe that this thing is true? And so, really pay attention to those things. Like, are you repeating the same thoughts 100 times a day? Well, if you are, then you're giving it a lot of attention, and you're creating an intentional stream of consciousness that will turn into rivers, go into the oceans of thought, and become who you are and how you act. Well, become who your character is. Hopefully that all made sense. The whole reason that I really wanted to spend a lot of time on this topic is one, because it's been on my mind for a while, and I'm definitely going to be expanding on this idea and going over it in much more detail. But I've definitely had a lot of, I've had to watch somebody that I care about very deeply go through a lot. And I have the separation, and I have this ability to detach from my feelings and my emotions and look at them from an outside perspective. And I think that gives me a much more unique experience. And so I struggle, because I watch a lot of people that I love and care about go through things. And I think, well, why are you doing that to yourself? And that's just not helpful. But I think going through metaphors like these and kind of giving this framework, maybe it might help somebody to be able to take a step back, and to help them help you, get a framework for reference, and to maybe potentially be able to do something positive, and redirect some, rivers, or clean out some garbage from, some streams or oceans that are there. Maybe none of this made sense, but I hope it did. Well, I feel like I've talked about this for long enough. I definitely wrote a lot of notes, and it's amazing, again, how this process is unfolding. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you next time. I did do a lot of burpees from my last video, and that was a lot of fun. Not so sure how many burpees I will have to do for this video. I assume that there's a couple. Also, I'm going to go back through, and I think what I would like to do is next week I'll go through these videos and be like, oh yeah, I agree with this part, I don't agree with that part. Maybe it'll be just a brief part in the next video I do. Not sure yet. I do want to start upping up. I do want to start posting more frequently. So I'm going to work on either cutting this into shorts and doing daily videos. I'm not committing to that just yet, but I am committing to another video next week. And I want to start doing more content. And if you like this, awesome. If you hated this, awesome. I don't know why you're still here watching. That's, I don't understand it, but that's cool. If you don't agree with it, please, comment. If you like it, like the video. If it helped you, maybe you can write, something down below. Yeah. But otherwise, hopefully see you next week, and hope you have a good day and a good week.